Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Trails into Reverie. In the last part, we confronted the big baddie of the Zero Stratum. That wasn't all nice. We freed the girl who looked like Kia from her duties. She's now watching over us. Happy life. We got one last thing we gotta do. We gotta go through the white ceiling stone that we just got. So, I'm gonna cut to that point, and then we'll pick it up from there. So I will see you in a bit. Beyond the Reverie. Alright, let's check it out. The final Daydream, I think. These are but minute fragments of memories drifted in the endless ocean. Memories of what will be in the near future. Oh shit. Could they be shadows of the tangled threads woven by Elysium? Or perhaps faded illusions that slip through the cracks of time and space. Setting up for the next game again. There are none who know the answer. Good choice. What's this one? Journey, January year 20. Between the two mountains of typical Calvard Basin sits a long lie. Town known for two things, being the eastern entrance to the Republic and its exceptional hot springs. Through these enticing factors does it continue to become welcome tourists hailing from both home and abroad. Yet today it served guests quite unlike its many unseasoned visitors. These had come from another renowned hot spring paradise situated in the northern reaches of Erebonia. Rean, my boy! The depth of flavor of food here is just exquisite. Agreed, the Phoenix Wing's food is certainly nothing to sneeze at, but I have my doubts that the chef could replicate such dishes this unique in taste. The Bishan Inn's reputation continues to precede itself. Baron Tio and Lady Lucia Schwarzer were sampling the inn's culinary delights, spear tied with some spilling fast. Their daughter Elise sat next to them, her spear a bit lowered by comparison as she her brows furrowed with concern. I'm sure this luxury has come with just an equally luxurious price tag. There's four of us, so even 2 nights must have cost us a small fortune. Upon realizing what she said, she shook her head. I don't mean to dampen the mood. I know we have the money, but all the budgeting as a student council president has made a terrible habit of me seeing the numbers and everything. Her older brother Rean couldn't help but let out a chuckle. Then the budget buster and you will like how much we saved, because we're not here as paying customers. We were invited by the owners personally. They said they wanted to get to know us since we run similar establishments, so here we are. And we'll be inviting them to Ymir sooner than later, of course. Right, Dad? Oh, absolutely. I add this to the list of boons coming from our countries finally coming to terms with one another. The Republic is reveling under her levels of prosperity, and the relations between our people and we're more active and festive than ever. I, for one, welcome any opportunity to further foster friendship. The Baron took another healthy sip of his baijiu before continuing. Friendship over fighting, I say. Such a shame that the world tends to overcomplicate that simple concept. Seeing her husband's glass was almost empty, Lucia filled it to the brim while adding her own thoughts. That's all the more reason why we need to make the most of this invitation and enjoy ourselves to the fullest. The children nodded in agreement. And even then aside, there's no reason to spoil a family vacation when we still really have time to take them. Oh, I read about some unusual sweet dishes worth trying here. Would you like to share some with me, Rean? In a bit. I'm thinking about taking another soak in the hot springs, so I might be in the mood for something sweet after. The food here is delicious, but as far as I'm concerned, the hot springs are the real star of the show. That's my boy right there. The ruling lord of the hot springs paradise will never let a good discussion about them let them pass by. He was as fond of their quality and soothing effects as Rean, enthusiasm undeniably apparent from the warmth of his tone and the width of his smile. The medicinal springs happen to be a favorite of mine. I can't help but be fascinated by them time and time again. I can't believe it. I've always known about them, but here's the first place I've been able to feel the way that they warm you right to your core. Think we can make one available at the Phoenix Wings? Be worth to try, but that comes with its own obstacles. But for as many problems as Teal expressed in practical terms, Rean held just as many proposed solutions. The conversation grew more involved by the minute, leaving the ladies of the house to pleasantly bask in their glow, continue enjoying the meal before them. All four felt the same, that it had been too long since they had enjoyed each other's company. The wait had been well worth it. Oh, that's good. That night, including indulging in his past post-dinner soak in the springs, telling his family he was going for a walk, Rean departed the inn. Where's he going? Took a deep breath, crisp night air, lived long lie, feeling his lungs. The hot springs were an excellent bonus to his trip, to be sure, but that wasn't the real reason he agreed to visit. Who's that? Is that him? Is that Master Kafai? Yes, it is! It's Kafai! He had come in search for young Kafai, the famed sword hermit. Master Kafai was the founder of the 8 Leaves One Blade School, which Rean was a practitioner, and though now over 70 years old, he was still regarded as one of the strongest combatants on the continent. They had not met since Rean's enrollment at Thor's. Many a letter as it was exchanged during the 4 years that followed, but even they had stopped after Rean earned the right to call himself a Divine Blade over a year ago. There was so very much he wished to discuss with his master. What he had learned in his 4 years of traveling, what had transpired since becoming the Divine Blade, the true meaning behind being the final blade to master the 8 leaves. There's plenty I'd like to ask that have nothing to do with swordsmanship too. All these questions, all impossible to answer without first knowing the whereabouts of a single individual. Even a senior practitioner like Cassius Bright claimed ignorance, having received not a single update from their old master. He had always been elusive but a traceable sort, but wherever he was now, he was next to impossible to track. That was until word of a blade master being sighted in Long Lie reached Rean's ears. The man held a fondness for the town's specialties, those being the hot springs and its fragrant tea leaves, making the sighting worthy of particular note. He also knew that the letters were before they stopped that he intended to journey eastward, making Long Lie one of the more plausible stopping points. Word came to him just as the Schwarzers were invited to stay at the inn during their New Year vacation. Rean's instincts told him that the timing was a little too fortunate, but with how vague the lead was, even it would most likely result in him leaving the same as he had arrived. While he had not discussed the rumor being key to his traveling here, his family seemed to sense it was more than a simple pleasure trip for him. I know Dad would have a great time catching up with him, but I don't want to get his hopes up for nothing. These thoughts in mind, Rean made his way through the night streets. Long Lie. Long Lie's architecture was distinctly Eastern, making it a uniquely intriguing sight among most of the Calvard's towns and cities. This was not to say it was similar to Crosspell's East Street. With subtle colors paired with dignified beauty, every wall and stone exuded were the traditional concepts of wabi-sabi. One look was enough to understand the region was rich with history. This quiet charm would give way to contrastly lively evenings, where tourists both westward and farther eastward were greeted to stalls dedicated to the hot springs and more. This too held a traditional sort of charm. Rean asked several merchants if they had any information pertaining to the whereabouts of his master, somewhat sheepishly purchasing a number of souvenirs from their stalls to keep himself from being a nuisance. Then he justified would make excellent gifts for his master's friends, his co-workers, and his students. Oh boy. Can't believe it's almost time for them to graduate. I might be more emotional about theirs than I was for mine. For the first time, Rean would get to experience what it was like to be young. What it was like for the young birds he had taken under his wing for 2 years to finally leave the nest. Their first year had been eventful, to say the least. What had started as a problem class full of disagreements and mounting tension had slowly grown into one of compassion and understanding for one another. It was each new discovery about themselves and every new ordeal the world sought to impose upon them that they grew not only as individuals but as a team. He hoped this period would remain as much a meaningful part of their lives as it would always be for them. The months before the Retributive Tower's appearance held many a trial, making the 10 months that followed in its shadow pass all too quickly. In that time, Rean students continue to mature, building on everything they accomplished in their first year to prepare for and settle into their desired future. Indeed, whether it was by overcoming their demons or by learning to work with them in a healthier fashion, their paths up till now had been well worn. And while they may have had to rest from time to time, he was proud to be part of why their steps continued to face forward. Proud, but also lonely at the thought of saying goodbye. As their second year drew to a close, lacking grandiose events, but still rewarding in its own right, it was a mixture of emotions that bore conflict within him most. Can't believe I'll be going through all that over again next year, and even the year after that. Hell of a career to pursue, huh? He didn't know when he stopped walking. Realizing this, he resumed his search, paying a respected mind to the many generations of educators who came before him. No matter where he looked, he could not find Master Kafai in Long Life. It was, however, still too early to say whether the trip had been in vain, as he had at least caught an unverified report of the Blade Master being seen in the mountains to the south. While honoring such turn at night wasn't going to be ideal, but Rean was already firm on spending the next day with his family. Tonight it would have to be. Making a brief stop to the inn to tuck his souvenir somewhere secure, he then departed for his new destination. Night stroll in the mountains? I'm reading a novel. The mountains' winding, half-beaten trails would be more treacherous at night, but they were not off limits as such. The key, Rean knew, would not rely on sight alone. The senses of hearing and smell, perhaps even touch, were going to be equally vital in the hours ahead. Calling upon his experience and intellect to heighten all five senses, he took in the surroundings in full. This really took me back to training in the mountains. To call the experience training would imply that his time being one of simple tutelage between student and master, but it equated to so much more. The danger then was far worse than it was now, with some days requiring him to set foot in highly dangerous territories just to find a day's food to survive. Sounds like the Kunlun Mountains may have been used for similar exercises for a long time ago. Rean was starting to think on the information gained during his search as he continued along the trail. Searching for evidence of human activity in an environment like this was not a difficult task. Humans always leave something indicative of their presence behind that no wild creature could, be it a long dead fire, footprints, or traces are going on the hunt. One need only follow the light to lead to their source. Rean did so, advancing with caution instilled in him, both his old master and hunting enthusiast of a father. They soon led him to precisely declare evidence that a human had been in the area, while the evidence itself was far from what he expected. Remains of a camp? No. It didn't look like it had been left by martial artists in training or roaming hunters, but the most peculiar thing was that there was multiple sides like the first, all evenly spaced from the next. It was as though something was being measured. Maybe this is a form from a group of scholars doing field research? But it seems too large in scale for that. There was nothing more to be found here, Rean advanced. Soon after, he found another unusual amount of evidence. It's like someone forced their way through here in a car, or more like hacked open a path wide enough for a car to pass through. All further inspection here suggests that whoever was responsible had given up on this endeavor, leading him to wonder if they somehow found a success elsewhere. And if they did, why had they done this at all? The question pestered him if there was anywhere to clear wide paths. The remote depths of the mountains certainly were not it. But instinct told him that he was only a step away from discovering the answer. If I keep following this trail a little farther. With this thought, Rean sensed something of someone approaching. One person, two people. Yes, there were two, and it was clear that they were aware of his presence as well. Only for a fleeting second did he think they might be the ones responsible for the strange trails, but a deadly tension that now thickened in the air told him that there were no simple scholars. He felt them draw near, the night veiling themselves well, and then he felt them stop. "How about you show yourselves?" He spoke without placing his hand on his tachi, signifying that to those that watched he had no desire to fight. Their silhouettes then silently emerged from the darkest shadows of the mountains. They looked very much like the shinobi of the east he had heard about, their forms clad from top to bottom in black garments and their faces fully obscured. Ugh. I see your insight poses a threat after all, Divine Blade of the Empire. The contract with our client has yet to begin, but we will make an exception for one among the list of dangerous persons. Silhouettes then charged. They caught him completely off guard, drawing short, straight blades to attack him as they narrowed in. Rean's eyes widened in surprise, but nearly in the same moment he was in a fighting stance, a hand over his still sheathed Tachi. Fifth form Morning Moon! He perceived the direction of his foe's attacks to evade them, then mounted a counterattack of his own. All it took was that instant to repel or assault and leave them vulnerable. Ordinarily, this would be the time to take the offensive, but all Rean did was stare at the two in disbelief. The thought had entered my mind as I saw you move. Now that we've crossed blades, is that he paused, the disbelief in his eyes giving way to a more intent gaze. Are you practitioners of the Eight-Leaf School? Another pause, this time from the silhouettes, and were answering as though they were well aware of the question was coming. No, though we do possess ties to the school. We are the Ikaruga, practitioners of the Black God One-Blade School. The what? Rin was so stunned. The two Ikaruga held their blades horizontally and ready to thrust them forward at any moment. It was as though they wanted to make clear that while they had been caught off guard once, he would not be so fortunate twice. He responded by assuming the middle stance with his Tachi, but just as the sides are only beat away from engaging battle, what could only be described as a black cyclone roared from the darkness as it sped at such speed that it seemed to certainly slice anything it touched. Its appearance caught Rean by surprise more than the initial attacks by the silhouettes. He had not suspected an attack from that angle, that distance, or even that moment. His enemies, on the other hand, did not do so much as flinch at the sight. The approaching blade from over an arg and a half in length was heading directly for Rean's back. He couldn't possibly dodge it now. Perhaps he should have noticed. Perhaps it was impossible not to notice. Whatever the answer, the divine blade of the Empire would soon fall. The silhouettes waited in for his final moments to be convinced of no other fate in his future. When Rean spun his body in full circle, applying the intensity built into his Tachi from the motion to swing. The blow made was weighted yet precise, shifting the incoming blade to a new direction without mitigating its near overpowering force. This technique was an application of the first form helix. There was no greater course in the moment than to use it to redirect the attack without ever making direct contact. The spilling blade was now significantly off its intended course, but Rean slashed at it again, birthing a shockwave that further shifted its path. The blade went flying hairs to the right of the direction it had come from. A hand there was there to definitely catch it midair. Oh shit! What the fuck's this? You may have only recently taken the title, but you are worthy of being called a divine blade all the same. You use the unclouded eye well. From his hand emerged a new figure from the darkness. While he was clad in similar garments and the silhouette, something about his presence was much more inspired by comparison. His musculature was thoroughly discernible beneath his body, covering fortified suit. His every movement, however slight, reflected a complete lack of hesitation. And the faint light of his eyes, visible through his mask, projected no emotion whatsoever. The man possessed the aura of a true warrior, one projected only by those who have fought more battles than was possible to count. Fall back, he is too formidable for a foe for you to handle. The silhouette slid into the darkness in an instant. Only the new rival was left to face me. I need to know, who are you and why did you attack me? Our contract forbids the disclosure of such information. You'll leave this place now, fledgling Divine Blade. The tone was not one of advice, nor one of an order. It was as if the man were stating a fact. His calmness veiling an undertone of malice that had told Rean that what would happen if he did not do as told. I'm afraid I can't do that without an explanation. Not when I haven't found what I'm looking for yet. I understand. Then, there's no longer anything to discuss. All they can do is battle. I, Kurogane of the Rogetsu School, shall be your opponent. Kurogane stood at attention, the large blade that he'd thrown before he now pointed. I'd rather have this settled with words, but I can see that's not an option. Rean sighed, taking his own stance in turn. Then Rean Schwarzer, master of the Eight-Leaf One-Blade Schools in 7th form, shall be yours! The Divine Blade moved instantly. The bizarre weapon Kurogane wielded was less akin to a sword and more equally sized, and more four equally sized blades arranged in the shape of a cross, their bases connecting to a single point. Yet then, he could direct this large weighted shuriken as though it were a simple child's toy spoke volumes about how strong he was. Still, even if it was not infallible, for it was not to be ideally used in close range combat. Kurogane appeared to have no other key weapons in hand either, meaning that if Rean could force him to fight with it, where he could be at his most disadvantageous, he would very likely come up out of this the victor. This is what he had in mind when choosing to act first. Second form, Gale! He closed the gap between them to his blade and made a wide swing toward his opponent in the blink of an eye. Kurogane blocked the blow with ease. That, however, meant nothing in the larger scheme of things. Rean knew well this man's capabilities. So long as the gap between them was closed, and it was, he considered the attack a success. But just as he thought he would be able to push onward and overpower his foe by mounting a newly fierce assault, Kurogane had split his cross-shaped shuriken in half. The ease at which he did made it clear that this was intended by design. Oh shit. He could dual wield double sabers. There was no hiding his shot. In the West, double sabers were seen as relics from the Dark Ages, and they were difficult to utilize. Crow was the only person Rean knew who was competent with one, and only one. The skill which had to use two was almost too difficult to fathom. His surprise created an opening that Kurogane was not going to let pass unexploited. Possessing twin two-ended blades allowed the shinobi to perform considerably more strikes than Rean, giving him no chance to push back. Steel sparked as the weapons clashed. Kurogane was dominant for some time, then he could do nothing to bolster his advantage. Strike and spark after strike and spark, the advantage was moving back to Rean. This is due in part to him being used fighting this weapon that defied rationale, but it was also because he had been given the time to find out what he was looking for. The perfect range in which to attack. Double sabers were forged with a shorter reach than they had appeared to have, something inevitable due to their handle being in the middle. It could have been because he also used them as shuriken, but the length of Kurogane's sabers were even shorter than Crow's, meaning Rean would have to adjust with the longer length of his blade. He measured patiently, staying only just out of Kurogane's reach and evading the onslaught by a hair's breadth each time prior to countering. It was calculated quickly thanks to Kurogane's frequent rapid attacks, being all Rean had to do now was wait for the right moment. This moment would come to the form of his opponent showing him impatience for a stalled battle, driving him to take an unneeded step forward. He evaded the strike expertly, instantly returning it with an upward diagonal slash. Forceful swing of his Tachi made contact with the handle of Kurogane's own swung weapon, knocking it clean out of his hand. Rean dashed forward to make use of this availed opportunity, but only after only a flicker of bewilderment, Kurogane moved to deny him. He blocked Rean's attack with the double saber still in his possession, then hurled a hidden kunai with his free hand, jumping backward a significant distance while doing so. Very good, Divine Blade of the Eight Leaves. You may pale to the skills of our princess, but you without a doubt deserve your reputation. Princess? Rean's invitation went unanswered as Kurogane took a notably different stance than before. I shall demonstrate my respect for your skill with my finest technique. This put Rean staunchly on guard. Senses heightened, he focused every nerve in his body, fixing his eyes on whatever was to come of Kurogane, who was now gone. Nothing remained where Rean's opponent had just stood. He hadn't taken his eyes off him, never eased himself for a moment. Yet Kurogane was nowhere to be seen. How? Had he moved that quickly? Was it some kind of spatial translocation? But there were no signs to indicate either one. Was it that he never moved at all and was still there, sight unseen? No, that wasn't it either. The double saber Rean had repelled to the ground was also gone. I could still sense him, so he hasn't gone far. Rean suppressed the panic welling up within him, holding his senses for a second time. That was when another black cyclone swirled toward him from the shadows. He half expected something of this nature, so with a little deviation, he was able to deflect it as he did the first time. The attack indicated that Kurogane had reassembled his shuriken after recovering its lost half so he could throw it again. It also indicated, together with the slight changes in his surroundings, where he was now positioned. Rean needed a little more time to know where he was for certain, but ahead of making a solid conclusion, the cyclone came at him yet again from a new angle. That was fast! Though he blocked this attack as well as the last, he thought before he could fully correct his posture, the next cyclone approached. The gap between was getting shorter and shorter. There was another. The time was shorter, and another, shorter. Soon these assorted smallest cyclones were seemingly growing into a blended grand storm of death, with Rean trapped at its center. This doesn't feel like him being attacked by a single person. Did he make phantom copies of himself? He had no idea from where the next cyclone would form, and by the time he located it, the next one was ready. Even the unclouded eye wasn't going to be enough for him to deduce Kurogai's location. He had been able to repel every blade that had met with him so far, but that was growing increasingly difficult. I don't want to use it, but I'm sure I have no choice. Well aware that being so placed him in danger, Rean took his mind off the battle. He gave up blocking and evading attacks, dedicating the bare minimum of his focus to not sustaining lethal blows and focusing his mind inward. He focused on the power that he had long cultivated inside of him. The power he had feared, loathed, and rejected. The power he now relied, desired, and nearly surrendered himself to. The power he faced with his loved ones at his side, making it a true part of himself. With his mind clear as day, he unleashed its full strength. Woo! He imbued this Tachi with his great power surging out of him, crying out as he did so. Spinning his body forcibly around to create a bladed circle around him. The energy released by Tachi repelled all the forthcoming shuriken with ease, and with them, Kurogai's phantom copies lurked in the shadows, or the darkness faded to nothing. There you are! He charged toward Kurogane. The man was thoroughly overwhelmed by Rean's sudden counterattack, throwing him completely off balance. There was nothing he could do to repel what would come next. It's time to settle this! Rean swung his Tachi downward while pouring all his might into a final single strike, but just as the two had felt the black battle was coming to an end, Zeroth formed duality. Accompanied with a voice as beautiful as a bell was a slash tearing through the sky, its color so black it threatened to eclipse the moon. It effortlessly stopped Rean's weapon from reaching its target. But that wasn't all. What? The high-pitched metallic sound, Rean's beloved Tachi was sundered cleanly in two. Oh shit. Princess! Kurogane was also taken aback by this new arrival. I had heard what was happening from both our scouts. You could have invited me to join the fun instead of keeping it all to yourself. The words as he chatted Kurogane indicated dissatisfaction, but the music of her tone betrayed her excitement. Rean made to see who this mysterious figure was. Oh shit. And the sight of her alone took his breath away. She was young, wearing a fortified suit that looked to be a marriage of classical and modern Eastern styles, with long silver hair that almost appeared to glow in the pale moonlight. Her age was likely close to Rean's, perhaps a little younger, and well-defined features that were still held traces of adolescence, pairing strikingly in contrast to the empty void behind her eyes. There was an air of a young noblewoman who had been sheltered from impurities all her life, and the stench of a baleful warrior who had bathed in the blood of countless lives. How she was both and neither at once, Rean could not understand, but it was this quality that made her all the more captivating and dangerous. The woman's left hand was a large black and gray blade that threatened to freeze him for daring a glance at it. No doubt it was what halved Rean's Tachi moments ago. What did... Rean fumbled for the words as he clutched the useless handle tightly in his hand. The fair-haired woman only smiled as she looked down upon it. Your weapon was very fine, but it was never any match for my friend, I'm afraid. She spun the black blade in her hands around gently before holding it toward the night sky to seemingly display it with pride. It wasn't hard to see why she would boast about possessing such a weapon. He had seen many blade with historical significance, but instinct told him that hers was better than any of those. The blunt side featured an intricate design of a deep gray that, while he could not discern its meaning there and then, he knew that was nothing else than a fine work of art. There was an aura about it, one cold as ice, that seemed to project its worldly surroundings, making it capable of cutting through anything it so desired. It came in company with a beautiful hilt of a deep red that contrasted its body without feeling out of place. This juxtaposition was, in a sense, much of a reflection of its wielder, with the two opposing natures being distinctive yet also as one. Rean thought as he observed, her blade was clearly something special, but that alone did not explain the strength behind her attack. He had never heard of the technique she used, but it was certainly connected to the 8 leaves in some way, and the skill she showed in executing it made her equal to a divine blade. He was so fixated on these thoughts rushed through his mind that he was only brought out by her sudden laughter. I don't think I'd ever meet you here. I wonder if our old master is behind guiding us to the same place. Or is it just a happy coincidence? Wait. The manner in which she spoke and her familiarity with Rean gave him a theory. That technique you just used really was really something. Consider me intrigued. Let's put you a league above more interesting than our senior practitioners. So he was right. Are you? Before he could hear what he already knew, she turned away, refusing to let him finish the question. He isn't here, so why don't you run back to your family? Go and make most of your vacation. Just don't let your skill with the blade slip. The real will need it again one day. She spoke with a certain dissatisfaction as she pointed down the other half of his broken blade, then leaped high, seemingly disappearing on the other side of the moon. Rean could only stare dumbfounded as she vanished. He couldn't even speak. Kurogane left with her. Oh shit, there's the broken blade. The Ikaruga, the Black God One Blade School, and our senior practitioners. Rean had been unable to fulfill his objective, and not just that, he was left with countless new questions about the people he encountered in the mountain itself. He felt there was a meaning behind being guided to a specific place, but how important it was, or what it entailed, he did not know. And yet, the person responsible for discerning that won't be me. Looking down at this broken Tachi, he was struck anew with how massive the world truly was. And he realized that, now that his master was confirmed to be elsewhere, the purpose of his visit to Long Lai was nothing more than to enjoy a wonderful, ordinary vacation with his family. This meeting here was but a peculiar coincidence. For now, at least. When I get back, I'll need to reforge my Tachi, and myself. Something stirred in this region, all across Calvard, but there's nothing he could do about it as he was. All he could focus on was on his training and bettering himself so he could one day play a part against the next threat that loomed over the distant horizon. New resolve welling in his soul, he made his way through the now still mountain track back to where his living family awaited. Oh shit. I'm not quite sure where this sets up in the next game. Interesting. Non-conventional student. Alright, who's this one? Aramis Academy is a famous educational institution in the Calvardian capital of Edith. The name derives from an artist central to Calvard's democratic revolution 100 years ago. This is also reflected in its goal of nurturing new talent and helping to forge a broader future for the new republic. The academy placed great value on traditional education, of course, but it was also encouraged the perspectives of new cultures and values, attracting many independent minds from across the area. It was a storied place of learning that reflected the republic's views of it as a whole. This story, for its part, begins not long after the springtime festival held yearly to welcome the new student body. It was just in the morning at the academy, countless students shuffling through its grounds. One of them in particular happened to draw on an unusual amount of attention. The young lady had long, soft violet hair, crowned with a black ribbon. Her figure had been cut very respectably, as well as she matured into a young woman of 17 years, and yet her face still held traces of girlhood days bygone. The beauty she was, she never failed to turn inquisitive heads as she strolled along. It's Renne! It's Renne Bright! She was a second year at Genus Royal. Oh, that's where she is. This is where she is. She's in Calvard now? I mean, I knew Renne was going to be involved in the later games, but this is interesting. She was a second-year student from Genus Royal Academy in Liberal, now studying at Aramis as part of an exchange program. Well, that explains it. She only just arrived in the spring. Renne's goal in attending was not only to further her education, but she had been considered highly gifted since she was a child, having already earned several doctorates in the years past, and there was little more a new academy could reasonably teach her. Her goal in reality was to use it as a front to operate freely in Calvard. It was hard to find one better than being a student. She already found the role relatively foolproof during her time at Genus. Even if there were limits to how much a student could get away with, society as a whole was soft on school children. To move freely would also require drawing as little attention as possible. She aimed to conduct herself modestly as any elegant young lady who wished to remain unseen should during her time at Aramis. There was just one very big problem with this plan. Good morning, Miss Bright. Isn't she just gorgeous? Look, I see her. She's so beautiful. And everyone says she's just as smart too. All she had to do was walk down the hall to be showered with greetings and whispers of envy and admiration. She looks alone. Her looks alone were already enough to make her the talk of the school, but after one of the teachers let slip that she received a perfect score on her entrance exam, there was suddenly not a single person who didn't know her name. The other students cared not much about how she wanted to avoid drawing attention. She was getting it whether she liked it or not. Naturally, not everyone was pleased with the booming popularity this new transfer student had attained in less than a month. While most were busy fawning over Ren's arrival that morning, another group watched the charade unfold from the shadows, echoing an audible touch of displeasure. Oh boy. Ren had yet to be enrolled in any clubs, so as soon as the day's lessons had come to an end, she packed her belongings and stood to leave. A word, if I may, Miss Bright. I was a fellow classmate surrounded by a small faction of students clearly loyal to their King Bee. Certainly. Though Instinct told her this was not going to be a conversation she wanted to have, she made an effort to pretend otherwise. She would not be provoked into behaving as anything but a mature, modest young lady. I've been wanting to get to know you better for some time now, you see, so I was wondering if you might join me for dinner this evening. The boy, Ronald Griffith, presented a gentlemanly smile. Ren was very much used to being asked out like this, and never once did she accept. She always made some excuse to turn them down. Today would be no different. I'm ever so sorry, but I'm afraid I have something urgent to take care of after school today. Some other time, perhaps. This was usually enough to get them to give up, but Ronald was a persistent one. Well, that won't do. I have something very important to discuss with you, and I've already booked us a table at a very fine restaurant so we can discuss in detail. Is there really no way for your business can wait? There was something ominous but a smile. Ren couldn't help but be curious what he was thinking. I'm afraid he can't. I'm so sorry after you've gone out of your way to prepare ahead of time. Still, I could spare a little time now, so I'd be happy to talk here if it's alright. So not tonight then. A pity. Ronald's tone read one less genuine sadness and more irritation that things were not going according to plan. Well, whether he let slip his true feelings on the matter, he quickly composed himself and smiled. Now is better than never, I suppose. This does consider everyone in the room, so perhaps it'll be better sit here. To this, Ren glanced around the room, noticing that only she, Ronald, and his lackeys were all who remained. Most were likely on the way home or in their respective clubs. While some would have ordinarily been in the classroom at this hour, she was certain none wanted to do anything with Ronald and his group. He took a step toward her and began to speak. I'm well aware, Miss Bright, that you have come all the way from distant Liberal to be here. It's not usual for students to transfer from afar for family reasons. But here, in your case, you came to Calvard just to learn these hallowed halls. How can I help but deeply admire your spirit and thirst for knowledge? Pure theatrics, this one. At the same time, I worry about you. Brilliant you may be, but living alone in a far-off land must be terribly lonely and challenging affair. We all need someone to depend on our lives, and that would be especially so in your situation. So if you don't mind me saying so, Miss Bright, I believe you're in need of someone to look after you, to protect you. As at last he shut up, giving Ren the chance to respond. She scrutinized him closely. In short, you'd like me to join your circle of friends, correct? Ronald's smarmy smile broadened. His father was a senator of the Republic's parliament, meaning he had held a significant amount of political power. His son had used this to his full advantage ever since joining the academy. Ronald had used his father's name to form a faction of sorts among the students, forcibly building his reputation until he was the leading candidate for the student council president in the election they staged in half a month's time. His goal, Ren assumed, was to bring the hottest talk of the academy to his faction to further secure his chances of victory. I think you'll find that joining us would help you feel more secure and at home here. Or perhaps you don't yet appreciate just how much of a difference having someone like me backing you would make on the life of an exchange student. True, she mused inwardly. Being in a group of high social standing would make it easier for her to gather information. She could leverage his father's connections to build more of her own that would pay itself in dividends in the days to come. Pompous boy had no way of knowing the actual circumstances that brought her to Aramis, but his proposal was in fact very beneficial to her. She returned his smile with a modest one of her own as she answered. You're kind of think so much of me, but I'm afraid I'll have to decline. Clear and unambiguous rejection. Ron's lips still curled into a smile, but he could not hide the twitch in his brow, nor could his lackeys hide their shock. They had, by all accounts, expected her to answer the opposite. Are you sure you won't reconsider, Miss Bright? Surely someone as bright and brilliant as yourself can see why accepting my offer will be in your best interests. I fear you don't know. If you don't now, you may well. come to regret it. The last words were a hair slower and deliberate to intimidate her. Renne, of course, was never going to fall for it. I'll admit it was a tempting proposal, tempting enough to inspire one to consider helping to start someone who would win the student council election. If only that someone weren't you. What did you just say? The sudden taunt caught him completely off guard, resulting in a flare of irritation escaping him. Renne, for her part, was unruffled by the change. I imagine you don't need me to explain why, but I'll be sure. I will to be sure. I've been very aware of the threatening glares I always attract on the way to school every morning. Have been coming from all of you. They've been a constant in my life ever since just before the festival. All were flabbergasted by the statement. Their silence confirming what she said to be true. She continued. Now you have every right to regard me with caution. I'm well aware of how much I stand out despite my best efforts. Taking potential threats under your own wing is a strategically sound move too. However, that your target was so easily able to see through your scheme shows everyone here just how inept you really are. I have better things to do than assist someone competent and small-minded. With the shrug and a sigh in somewhat of a dramatic fashion, Renne stood before Ronald, his shoulders trembling from rage. Good day to you all. Renne gave a courteous nod of acknowledgement before leaving the room, paying no mind to the wide eyes and open slack jaws she left behind. Ooh, Renne. Tell her, Renne. So Agati ended up getting pretty beat up from another one of Mom's crazy jobs she threw at him. So we did get some good data out of it, but ouch. Your mom was always so funny. That night in the dormitory, Renne and Tia were engrossed in a deep conversation through their laptops. That's Tia! Engrossed? Where the fuck did I get engrossed from? But it's always the same old with all of you. I'm surprised there's anything of Agati left with how often you tell him she has him clearly facing death. You two are in a rut. I know something that could spice things up. Maybe try adding a little romance to the mix like a couple of bright-eyed lovebirds we know. But we have agreed to go somewhere next week, so we're not in a complete rut. Oh, so they're finally going out? They finally made the next step forward? Oh, isn't that something? Stare as though adulthood await you, my dear friend. Renne! Tina graduated from the branch campus in Arizona just as Rean left for Calvard, leaving them no time to spend with one another in person. That wasn't ideal, of course, but from a hint of sadness came the habit of talking like this once in a week so they could stay in each other's lives. Oh, did I say Rean? Renne. Oops. They discussed anything from their new lives and environments, the fruits of the research, occasionally stumbled to a serious topical matter or two along the way. Sounds like a legal confrontation between the Verne Company and Epstein Foundation is inevitable at this point. I know. Can't believe this is really happening. Both frown at their screens. A recent development concerning the Calvardian industrial giant Verne Company had become a key source of concern for them of late. Ooh. It began soon after Crossbell returned to normalcy after the Supreme Leader's takeover the previous year. Professor Erica Russell approached the Verne Company to propose that they join the Western Marine Tech Union that she had been hard at work forming, and to no one's surprise, they refused. But Erica and the rest of the engineers involved could even finish getting. But before Erica and the rest of the engineers involved could even finish getting ready to go and change Verne's mind, something happened to make their union the least of anyone's priorities. Independent development of a new generation of orbments, and their generation's long partner in the subset of technology, the Epstein Foundation, would not be a collaborator. The latter would have been key supporters of Zamaria's orbment development and orbital technology in general since their very inception. Battle orbments were no exception to this. The Foundation had known their way around them since their very first model, drafting the incredible concept that had been used as a base ever since. Even the Reinford Company, before the Battle of Jormungandr, had not thought to develop their Arcus models on their own, instead favoring to develop them in partnership with the Storage Institute. The announcement was, quite simply, unprecedented and sent shockwaves throughout the industry. The Epstein Foundation was no less than pleased about being cast aside in this manner. While there were certainly legal concerns regarding who owned the patent to this technology, the greater concern was that the stable position in the industry as a whole was now becoming unstable. They initially responded by attempting to resolve this through peaceful means, but then when those attempts proved fruitless, it was reported that they were preparing for what they could only be an ugly international legal dispute. I'd say Vernon has the upper hand if this ever makes it to court. Unlike the previous Rondo ordinance, this sixth generation is designed to set a whole new standard. All of its main features are packed into with new tech, with some new features still being kept under wraps. I wonder what those are, but what could they be trying to develop that's important enough to ruin their relationship with the Foundation? Though I had heard about the government telling the Verne Company to focus more on weapons development. I have too. It sounds like they're planning to significantly revamp the military's weaponry. The official story is that they're planning on slimming the military down, but if they're pairing that with the latest in weapons development, then they're just as powerful, maybe more so. As part of the war's ceasefire agreement, everybody was required to downsize the military, bringing it more in line with that of Calvard's. Yet, if the Republic were to expand the capabilities of its military, this recently enforced equilibrium and superpowers would be quickly broken. Whatever may be true, I've got a lot of questions I need answers to. Maybe it would be worth visiting the Verne Company's headquarters in Basel at some point. You haven't learned anything more about where Professor Hamilton is at the moment, right? Nothing new or concrete, at least. It sounds like she's continuing her research eastward, but I haven't heard anything more specific than that. Mom and Grandpa haven't had any luck in contacting her either. I'm not surprised since that area isn't very well connected, but it's still unfortunate. She's a lot more personable than Professor Schmidt, so having her on our side would help a lot. Tita can only laugh. Yeah, there's a lot of worrying stories going around about how PMCs and stuff like that. It makes me wonder if none of this would be happening if she's still acting as an advisor for the Verne Company. The deeper into the conversation they went, the more Tita could feel her spirits sinking. The political climate in Western Zemuria was usually unstable at the moment, with its nations basking in prosperity. But she could not shake off the feeling that this peace was built over rotting wood, and that it could all come crashing down with but the slightest provocation. This is becoming especially true in the tech world, as it had undergone rapid growth in recent years compared to the other fields. So rapid, in fact, that no base could possibly sustain its sudden weight without cracks beginning to form. Try not to dwell too much on the worst-case scenario, Tita. This peace might rest on a knife's edge, but there's still plenty we can do to preserve it. That's why I'm here right now, and that's also why you're working so hard, too. We could find a million problems in the world if we wanted, but pessimism isn't going to make them go away, right? The words filled Tita with the right amount of comfort she needed in that precise moment. Yeah, I guess you're right. Thanks, friend. Oh boy. They continued on, losing track of time as he talked and well into the night. Before they knew it, the clock had struck 12. Well, it's getting really late, so I should probably be going. I'll talk to you soon, okay? Alright, good night, Tita. Night. Oh! Tita suddenly remembered something. The exclamation stopped ran just as she was about to end the call. Estelle and Yoshio told me to ask you if you're doing okay in school. Those two are always worrying too much. You'd think I wasn't talking to them too. She couldn't help but remember her interaction with Ron after class, but Ren quickly drove the thought from her mind. It wasn't worth dredging up. Tell them they can rest easy. Everything's fine. Good. They wanted me to let you know if you're being bullied so they can fly over and help. Ren could only sigh. Honestly, do they think I can't keep myself safe from a few schoolyard bullies? Actually, they said they were more worried about what you do to them than what they do to you. And her friend's silence, Tita couldn't help but burst out laughing. I worry about you too, obviously, but they're probably right. How awful of you! Even if that were to happen to me, I wouldn't do half of what you're imagining. Not anymore, anyway. See, it's saying that kind of thing that makes people worry. I'm a lady now. I need the magnanimity to forgive the transgressions of others. I'm also trying to do what I can to avoid standing out too much at school. You can try, but I think that's always been a lost cause. Anyway, now I'm really going to go before I remember anything else. Say hi to Zen for me if you run into him. I'm planning to go and see him when everything calms down here, so we'll do. I've been meaning to go and see someone else I've been indebted to in the past, too. By the time the two of them had finished talking and ended the call, one day had given way to the next. Zen! Are we going to see a portrait of Zen? Morning dawned, yet another day of school. Or just as she left her classroom in the main building to start the lunch and went to the descent in the staircase, she felt somehow suddenly someone suddenly draw near from behind her. Reflexively, she dodged out of the way. A female student then entered her field of vision. She had lost her balance, and her expression mixed in fear and surprise. She passed through the spot Renne had been moments before, but her momentum showed no signs of fading. If someone didn't stop her, she was going to start tumbling down the stairs. Renne was quick to grab her and pull her close. She supported the girl's weight with one arm, and with all the grace of someone taking part in a ballroom dance, saving her from falling. Several students happened to witness the event unfold and could not help but elicit gasps of admiration. Noticing the girl's eyes were still in focus, Renne gently addressed her. "Are you alright? You aren't hurt, are you?" Finally realizing the situation she was in, the girl, whose face had become quite red, quickly straightened her posture in a fluster. "Yes, I'm okay. You're in bright for the next class over, aren't you? Thank you so much for helping me." "You're very welcome, but I'll have to caution you from losing your composure like that next on the staircase. Do you have some really urgent business to take care of?" The girl first frowned in response, then paused to think, and then answered. "Nothing I can think of. It's weird, but even though it was probably my imagination, I felt like someone had pushed me from behind. Obviously, no one here would do that, so I must have bumped into someone by accident." She thanked her rescuer again before disappearing into the distance. This situation had deemed her imagination, however, and lingered in Renne's mind. If I hadn't sensed something was amiss, both of us would have fallen down the stairs. We could have been badly hurt. Was it really just a coincidence, or was it a deliberate action by someone who wants to hurt me? If it was the latter, she didn't have anything to support this theory, but with it, a familiar sensation. The feeling of malicious stares focused on her from the shadows. Oh boy. It took surprisingly little time for her suspicion to gain evidence. After finishing gym class the next day, Renne made it for the classroom again, preparing for her next lesson. As she did, she immediately noticed something was amiss. All of her textbooks had been glued shut with an excessive amount of adhesive. Try as she did to open them, it was a lost cause to get them to even a single page. It was an obvious attempt to harass her. The culprits behind the act were equally obvious. Not far where Renne was sitting, Ronald Griffith and his lackeys, whom she so memorably turned away 2 days prior, were snickering to themselves. Their eyes mockingly focused on Renne all the while. They're not even interested in hiding what they're doing, what they're like anymore. I'm sure at this point they want me to know who did to intimidate me. This development also confirmed to her in her mind that they were responsible for trying to push her down the stairs the day before. What a pitiful sight they were. Because she refused to join their group, her existence was in her eyes now nothing more than a hindrance to Ronald's campaign for student council president. They would stop at nothing to either break her spirit or force her to join, or shame her into lowering her popularity among the student body. It didn't matter that Renne had no interest in taking part of the election. After further inspecting the state of their textbooks, Renne's expression grew difficult to read. "I think I can make them usable again, but not in the little time I have left before class." The bell soon chimed to signal the start of her lesson. Renne left the textbooks out on top of her desk, making no effort to open them throughout. Her instructor was, of course, less than pleased about this perceived slight against them, picking her to answer a question as an attempt to chide her poor behavior. "Miss Bright, please read the textbook next paragraph aloud for us." Ron and his friend let out a series of pleased giggles at theirs, their minds delighting at the thought of a flustered Renne being told off and humiliated in front of the entire class. But what transpired in reality played out very differently from their fantasies. Without missing a beat, Renne did exactly as she was told, reciting the selected paragraphs she had been asked to read for word, and while her textbook remained closed. "Did you memorize the entire book?" And the instructor could not hide the surprise. "But of course, as a student of Aramis Academy, I would never dare to compromise in preparing for my lessons." Renne responded with such grace that she, of course, drew in more sighs and coos of admiration from both her instructor and peers alike. It was only Ronald and his posse who groaned with sullen expression. Oh boy. The next incident came on Renne's way to school the next morning. She entered the school gates with a horde of other students and was just about to step into the school building when she noticed a foul smell come from above her. She looked upward, noticing a portion of the fencing surrounding the building's rooftop was falling directly above her. Other students noticed at the same time, letting out screams of horror and worry as they couldn't do anything about it. I could get out of the way easily if I wanted to, but the fencing was over 2 arc in length. She could escape unharmed, but the other students around her would likely not. That was a risk she was unwilling to take. Grasping the battle ornament hidden in her back, she cried out, "Airstrike!" A sphere of wind formed in response to her incantation, flying upward at high speeds. She carefully controlled its power so that instead of sending that fence flying, it simply canceled out its momentum instead, allowing her to hop and catch it with ease. This was no accident. The smell makes it obvious. It was the distinct smell of a liquid extracted from a certain plant monster. One of its properties was to imitate the natural corrosion of metal, resulting in its application in certain solvents. This made the fence fall into deliberate action that the perpetrator had been trying to disguise as an accident. And with Renne having been the target of several malicious acts already, the culprit was clear. Again, she could feel the presence of those familiar hateful stares pouring into her from the shadows. But again as well, they were not the only ones with eyes on her. Whoa, that was awesome! Did you see that? Is there anything she can't do? Renne's quiet meditation was disrupted by a multitude of cheers and applause from all around her. As if she were a performer just about to leave the stage, she gave an elegant bow in response. This would not be the last time she endured harassment from Ronald's group, but each and every time they thought they bested her, she would handle herself with exemplary skill, her efforts only serving to make her more popular. The state of affairs continued for several more days before a seemingly out of patience Ronald summoned Renne behind the school building after the lessons were over for the day. He stood oppressively before her, his lackeys behind him, with the composure he attempted to feign before, now replaced by plain vile anger. Oh boy. Let me give it to you straight, Renne Bright. You are an eyesore. Even that gentlemanly air he impersonated before was gone. Really? Well, that's not a very polite thing to say to a classmate. Don't try to act cute, innocent. I put too much damn time and mirror into building my position up at this academy, but who's always the center of attention instead? It's you. It's always you. It's like you deliberately trying to sabotage my chances of success, and that's the last thing I can afford right now. The more livid Ronald became, the more unruffled Renne was in turn. You're only sabotaging yourself by setting me up to succeed over and over again. You are aware of that, right? Had she not been forced to defend herself against him over and over again, she would not have received nearly as much attention. This being pointed out caused Ronald to return an audible touch of frustration. Who cares about how it happens? The point is, this has gone long enough. So, I'm gonna have to ask you to step off the stage for a while. What do you mean? Ronald seemed to present some of his initial cool from when they first talked as he answered. Oh, I mean something very simple. You just won't come to school until the election is over. And if I refuse? To this, he raised a hand, and in response, his lackey stepped forward to surround her. The boys were unusually well built for their age, showing off their hulking forms in hopes of intimidating her. Refusing is not an option, I'm afraid. If you weren't going to oblige me willingly, we'll just have to make it so you can't come to school for a while. His lackeys cracked their knuckles dramatically to clarify their leader's intent. Well, that's not good. I think we both know that would constitute a grave violation of the school rules. Something about her inflection caused him to mistake her commentary as showing a hint of fear, further fueling the desire to dominate the situation. No one's watching a place like this, and if someone did happen to see my father's a politician, he can make it go away. If they don't willingly choose to ignore what they saw in deference to my position, that is. Everyone at this academy seems to be already know their place, you see. Everyone except you. His smile was so unpleasant that a sigh escaped Renne. Oh, I think you're the one who doesn't know your place. I don't want to be rough with him after what Tita said, but he needs to be taught a good hard lesson. Ronald continued on, oblivious to what was running through his apparent victim's mind. Now do as I say. His lackey drew closer, ready to seize her. I'll keep it mild, but I still want this to hurt them, just enough to set them on the right track. I don't think Estelle or Yosha would object to that. But as she was just about to act, stop this at once! A girl's shout could be heard from the distant direction of the school building. She was, of course, not shouting at Renne. And who are you? Ronald was visibly irritated. Though the girl appeared to be visibly nervous, she continued to stand her ground. I didn't mean to listen in, but I couldn't help but overhear what was happening here. You can't go through with this. What are you doing? What you're doing is wrong. The girl stepped forward until she was directly in front of Renne to protect her from her schoolyard bullies. As she did so, the light revealed sleek, dazzling blonde hair that shimmered much like the sunshine above. Renne recognized her to be the first-year student who lived in the dormitory right next to her. They weren't close to one another. At most, they only exchanged polite greetings with one another as they passed each other in the hall. She always seemed like a quiet, polite young woman with a good upbringing, however, not the type whose eyes would glow with resolve as she put her well-being on the line for someone else's. Renne was surprised by this, as was Ronald, though he was less than impressed. He never fathomed that another student would dare to resist him. One thing he did sense was that her resistance was a little more than a brave front. With excitement at the thought of stripping that front bare, he grew a sadistic smile and addressed her. Is it now? Well, how fortunate for me that I have you to show me the error of my ways. Renne can wait. You're a first year, I assume. I'm gonna need to give you a lesson in just how right and wrong works in our society. Upon a signal, lackey shifted to surround the new target over Renne. She began to tremble as danger closed in on her, but still she did not move. Don't you dare! This time it was Renne who spoke up. I'll give her what she wants, so don't you dare touch her. But, you sure about that? She wasn't planning on that response, but Ronald was more than happy to have his win in any form. I'll stay away from school for a while. That's what you want, right? But then the experience of studying abroad has been rather tiring for me, so I need some rest. Renne's voice was gentle in an attempt to assuage the kind girl's concerns. Ronald, meanwhile, made no attempt to hide the joy he felt at victory, laughing heartily with all the glee of a spoiled child. Good, now everyone knows their place here. I see no reason to harm either you now that I've got what I want. Consider yourselves lucky that now that I've decided to let you go. Ronald turned away and made leave, his lackeys following suit. Good day to you then. Next we meet, the school shout will be all mine. And then he was gone. With only the girls left behind the school building, the younger two looked up to her at her senior, concerning welling in her expression. I really am alright. You're very kind to worry. Renne's smile was of genuine kindness. From now on, Renne did intend to stop coming to school, citing illness as the official reason behind her absence. The students then gathered in the Academy's auditorium several days later for the long-awaited student council election. Aramis Academy as a whole placed great importance in the autonomy of its students, and as such, the student council exercised an unusual amount of power. It also weighed upon them a massive responsibility as being the sole planner of the school's Academy's festival, a symbol and celebration of spring in the capital. This, however, also led to the position of being a major status symbol even long after graduation. All this was why a large number of students put their names forward to become the student council president every year. Yet this year, a great majority of the most promising candidates dropped out under mysterious circumstances, leaving only Ronald and the others to associate with him on the ballot. I couldn't exactly boast about winning by default. Ronald and his supporters sat in the rest area, chuckling among themselves at the whole affair. Perhaps his name wasn't the only one on the ballot, but none of the others had done any certifiable campaigning, meaning his election was positively assured. Eventually, the time came for him to give a speech. It was a compelling one. He played the part of a respectable young gentleman as he delivered it, speaking with that same silver tongue he inherited from his father. There were some moments where he failed to hide his arrogance, but as no one else had prepared a speech to give, this was not the blow to his campaign otherwise it would have been. Now, if you could turn your eyes to the screen he spoke of at the back of the auditorium, this is a rather notable feature to have in a school building, to have anywhere, and was installed several years prior for use in lectures and display recreational films. Other nations had yet to indulge such luxuries, showing just how far Calvard was in its technology. Up until then, students had used it to display photographs during their speeches, but Ronald intended to take it another step further. He wanted to share a promotional video, and not a simple makeshift, self-produced one that might ordinarily be presented by an amateur, but a rather professional work he paid a considerable amount of money for. Its quality was genuinely impressive. His victory was written in stone, but this, he knew, would cement it that much more. Convinced this would serve as the perfect beginning to his ascension to the top of the social hierarchy, he started the video. The musical number he played was rousing, fitting. What followed then was Ronald appearing on screen. So how much mirror do you want for supporting me? I can make it worth your while. What? The video playing before them was not the one intended. Rather than an inspiration show of what he could do, what he bring to the student body, it was a recording of him buying off one of his opponents just days before. As hushed whispers of confusion spread through the auditorium, the next clip played. If you know what's good for you, you'll draw for your candidacy right now. Although the only thing you'll be present of is a hospital bed. Next was an equally unexpected scene of Ronald intimidating another candidate into withdrawing from the race. As it continued, Renne realized what was going on. Someone out there had replaced his carefully prepared video with another. The initially hesitant whispers exploded into loud enough murmurs that he had to raise his voice over them in his attempt to quell the situation. This is a forgery! Someone's attempting to frame me! But just at that moment, as if waiting for his cries of denial, a girl's voice resounded from the auditorium's entrance. I'm afraid it is all entirely genuine. Her voice rang out with wonderful clarity, charming all who had heard it. She ran her hand through her violet hair and flipped it back as she walked slowly towards the stage. Oh, she hacked the video. bribing potential threats, blackmailing, threatening, and even executing violence against others, and many other cases of bullying besides. You're guilty on every count, Ronald Griffith. Before anyone could fully understand what was happening, the student was on the stage and staring Ronald down. All eyes were fixed upon this elegant figure. Indeed, without any further effort at all, she had the air of a protagonist from some epic tale from making her long-awaited appearance. Damn it, Red and Bright! Must you insist on getting in my way every turn? He growled through a sheet of sheer anger. In contrast, the recently absent Renne responded with a brilliant composure. You're the one getting in the way. Of the fair running of this important election, your countless crimes have made a mockery of the whole process. Renne then turned from Ronald to the rest of the crowd student by. She continued to list his crimes alongside the still-running video. Some elicited frowns, others sympathy, others complete silence. But by the time she was finished, all were united in a single overpowering emotion: anger. It brings me no joy to say this about a fellow student, but I'm afraid it must be said. Ronald Griffith, you do not deserve to even attend this prestigious academy, much less be the president of its student council. Similar censure from other students followed in rapid succession. Yeah, she's right! Stop ruining our academy! They've gone too far! Renne's accusation wasn't the only reason for their anger. The students of Aramis had long loathed Ronald's oppressive behavior. They only hadn't spoken out before because they were afraid of his father's power. Now they realized that he'd be stopped, their anger had reached an explosive boiling point. Ronald suddenly found himself at the center of a torrent of abuse. He looked to his lackeys for support, but even they refused to meet his glance. It then dawned on him just how fragile all he thought he built was. Rage gave way to an instant deep despair and casting a glare of pure hatred toward Renne. Ronald hurriedly sprinted off out of the auditorium. Only then, when he was completely out of sight, did the air erupt with cheers of joy. In the end, the dress in the aftermath of the election took long enough that by the time she left for the gates, it was already evening. Yet, even how late it was, instead of walking her usual route home, she stepped off the path to enter an entirely unoccupied park. How does this work? No one's going to interrupt us here, so how about you come out now? In response to her words, Ronald emerged from before her for the first time since he ran away earlier in the day, and with 10 or so companions in tow. These men weren't his usual lackeys, but instead vicious figures with dark expressions and gaudy clothing. They were clearly not students of the academy. More than likely, they belonged to some local gang. You don't keep very good company outside of school now, do you? With how they're dressed up, I assume you must be out to a party or something. I'm gonna wipe that smug smirk out there at that face of you for good, Run Bright. My dazzling future in politics was guaranteed, but now you're gone and ruined everything. What am I supposed to say to my father now? That's your problem, not mine. Or are you so small a man that you can't own up to the consequences of your own mistakes? Not even a second passed between his outbursts and the manner in which she snapped back, causing the temper to grow twice as vile. That's it! I don't care what it takes. You're going to pay for thinking you could cross me and get away with it. Have at her. There won't be any consequences of going too far. My father will see to that. The men sprung into motion upon Ronald's signal, but what followed them made them doubt their eyes. There she goes. Ronald could not understand what just unfolded before him. His eyes relayed the information well enough, but his mind rejected it completely. As the second after he ordered his new lackeys to attack, Renne had produced a monstrously sized black and gold scythe from thin air. This in itself was beyond comprehension, and that wasn't the last thing to be so. The scene was like a cat toying with a powerless cornered mouse, except in this shocking case, Renne was the cat and his men were the mice. They surrounded her at first, and yet all it took was a single swing of her conjured weapon to cause most of them to collapse to the ground. In less than 10 seconds, their confidence had crumbled with their bodies. The mice had made to scurry as fast as they could, but the cat gleefully gave chase. They were even given moments where she let a few think they had gotten away, only for her to immediately close the gap between them. It was only after she was bored that she would knock them unconscious like the rest. Then she would seek delight in her next hunt. Like heavy sacks of potatoes, the men fell one by one, until only Renne and Ronald were left. This can't be happening. This young man was still struggling to come to terms with what he just witnessed as Renne stretched her limbs like a bored child still gearing up to play. Amateurs, every last one of them. I thought I could at least have a little fun. Oh, but don't you worry, I didn't exactly slaughter them. She turned her gaze over from the spectacle of her own creation to Ronald. Would you be open to giving me a little more entertainment, perhaps, Ronald? Ronald twitched in fear at the mention of his name. In this moment, she was now nothing more than a beast in a human skin. Stay away from me, my father's in Parliament, you know. Try anything on me and you'll regret it. Her response was an expression of pure pity before tossing what appeared to be a magazine at his feet. It's one of today's tabloids. You might find its contents relevant. What? At first he was baffled by the shift, but the second he peeked at the cover, his face went pale. Representative Griffith suspected of bribery and connected to organized crime! Read the headline in giant punchy lettering. There's a whole special feature on your dearest daddy, complete with evidence. It mentions that the CID is going to be conducting an investigation as well, so it's maybe the last day you could say he's in Parliament. My condolences. No. No! So visceral was his shock at the news that the simple word was all he could muster. Even then, Red wasn't finished. So now that he's been removed from the equation, I'll ask again. Would you be open to give me a little more entertainment? She edged closer and closer, her scythe in hand, and with a sadistic smile lacing her lips. Ronald tried to retreat in fear before tripping over a rock and falling hopelessly on his backside. All he could do was watch as though she were the Grim Reaper. Tears and snot streamed down his face. Be a doll and play with me, then you'll understand why they used to call me the Angel of Slaughter. She raised her scythe above her head and ready to swing it downward before realizing what she said. Oops, a grown woman wouldn't play with dolls, though, not would she? And here I thought I could better control my childish glee. She covered her mouth with her free hand, blushing with feminine modesty at her slip-up. No, this was behavior befitting the proper way she wanted to reflect. After composing herself, she turned her attention back to her prey, only to see that he was already unconscious. Finished? As she left the park, a calm young called out to her. I certainly am. Red met eyes of the brown-skinned young man leaning covertly against one of the trees. It was safe to assume he had witnessed the entire affair unfold. Who's that? He glanced at the park for the brief moment before speaking with the slightest but genuine admiration. You really are something. In what way? In every way. Even I was more struck about the hacking abilities of the famous Kitty than the combat prowess of the infamous Angel of Slaughter. It's still hard to believe you managed to find dirt on his bigwig dad that easily. Ren's response was a matter of fact, showing no sign his praise had gone into her head. Most people aren't as cautious about cybersecurity as they ought to be. Understandable with how new most are to it. Of course, isn't nearly as easy as this was when you're dealing with corporations and politicians at the top of the food chain. It made it sound like you've tried it before. Maybe I have. Ren's smile was both cryptic and darling. I've been more impressed with you. You were quick to write a piece that's scathing while also finding me exactly the proof I needed. I'm glad Grace introduced us. Just doing my job. Loren's man's name was Dingo, and he was a professional reporter for a tabloid. He was extremely capable at his job, very well connected, and held a reputation for never shying away from danger. After being introduced to one by Grace Lynn, he and Ren made a deal with one another just a few days prior. The terms were simple. Ding would provide Ren with proof of Ronald's misdemeanors, and Ren would use her hacking abilities to provide evidence of his father's crimes. Both were now reaping the rewards of the other's success. No, man, I did get some help from a friend. He was none too pleased by being asked to look into a scummy politician's equally scummy son, but he pulled through. Oh, you just have all kinds of connections, don't you? She did sense something someone other than Dingo was acting on her behalf while she was off school, but she wasn't sure about who that someone was. This curious sensation regarding their identity remained as she continued the conversation. You know, I'm surprised you didn't meet any resistance in running that story. That goes to show how big of a fan the government was of Griffith. They left him alone because he didn't actively oppose the current president's party, but from the CID's perspective, the chance to take him down was about as good as it was going to get. That does sound like Miss Taito Master over there would do. I can't say I like the feeling of being used by her, but oh well. Dingo made a curious observation. I have to wonder why you went to such lengths to get rid of a small fry like him. Did he really bother you that much? Ren glanced briefly at Ronald, still collapsed on the ground at the park, before shrugging her shoulders dismissively. Not in the least. I didn't intend for this to go as far as it did either. I only wanted to teach him enough lessons so he'd leave me alone, but it was then that the younger student who tried to save her came to mind. I think the students deserve as much a better student council president than him. She then let out a titter that was most refined. As been expected, the allegations led Ronald's father to resign from Parliament while he resigned from Aramis Academy. A group of students who exerted power over the student body with his backing vanished overnight. As a result, bidding peace to return to the grounds that for the first time in a long time, in too long. One thing, however, came from this Renne had not expected in the least. Here are all the documents relating to the next month's budget. The student council and its president accepted the documents from the blonde-haired first year in charge of general affairs, perusing them straight away. After Ronald dashed off from the auditorium on the day of the election, most of those in his group who put down their name on the ballot dropped out in a timely fashion. Voting still took place even then, but once all said was done, nearly 70% of the votes cast were disqualified. This was because they were all in favor of someone who never had put her name on the ballot, Renne Bright. Aramis Academy was known with how little its staff interfered with many liberties it gave its students, but this time the staff was clearly concerned that dissatisfaction with Ronald was going to present dire problems in the future. The teachers chose to directly negotiate with Renne, and in the face of such fervent demand, she reluctantly accepted the position as student council president. None of her duties posed a challenge to her, but by accepting it, she had completely and utterly failed her initial goal of avoiding attention. Oh no. I wonder if this is how the Thor's Branch campus's first student council president felt when he was selected. Even I couldn't believe it when Tita told me. Probably. Alright, it is what it is, I suppose. I'll just have to make use of this the best I can. There she is! Look at her! Sunlight beamed into the student council room. The blonde-haired girl and her two friends struggled with the new workload they were adjusting to. As Renne sat there, ears open to random talk and the occasional grumble, a thought crossed her mind. She had no end of real-world worries. The problems aspiring from rapid technological development, the society's next move, the ominous winds of change blustering over Calvard. But despite all those, she wanted to enjoy her simple time while she could. Let's say we get this work done so we can celebrate with the tea party, The arrival of spring was now a distant memory, even if summer had yet to come. There was nothing particularly spectacular about this time. It was just another ordinary, beautiful, bright afternoon. Oh boy. That was interesting. The unconventional student! Unconventional indeed. Alright. So I'm guessing all that sets up for the... Fuck, there's more? Alright, well this is going way too fucking long. I didn't think this was gonna take so long. So much for the final episode, right? Fuck me. Alright, when we come back, we'll keep going through all these. We'll see how many more. I guess these are where the last four Daydreams are, though, I guess. So which means there's one more Daydream to watch after this one. Oh shit! At least I'm assuming this is what it is. Alright. When we come back, we'll finish off these Daydreams and we'll officially... I know I've said this a million times, we'll officially wrap things up. Fuck. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you then. Later.